Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, inshallah, we shall try to answer this question. How come cells are so small? Why are they so tiny? How come you can't see them with your naked eye? How come there's not like a big, giant, blobby cell walking about the street? So what is it that limits the size of cells? Why do they have to be so small? Perhaps you wondered. So it turns out there are certain limitations to the size of cells. They just can't keep growing and growing and growing. And we shall inshallah try to explore this topic today. One restriction to the size of a cell is diffusion. So diffusion as a process works very well for short distances. It doesn't work so well for larger distances. If you have a small cell, oxygen can diffuse into the cell and carbon dioxide can diffuse out of the cell very easily. So it works out just very, very good. But if you have a big cell, like pictured over here, it's very hard for oxygen to reach the inner recesses of the cell, so to speak, because diffusion is a slow process and the concentration gradient is very slow in relaying oxygen to the inner core of the cell. Same thing with diffusion of carbon dioxide from the cell. So diffusion limits the size of the cell. A second very important reason why cells can grow big and big and big is because of the ratio of the volume of the cell to the surface area. See, the cell membrane is a very busy place. Everything that goes into the cell and everything that's coming out of the cell has to go through the cell membrane. The cell membrane is kind of like, the boundary of the country, so to speak. It's like that's where the airports are. So anything that's coming in and anything going out of the cell has to go to the cell membrane. If you have like a big cell, there's going to be a lot of traffic in and out of the cell, right? So the membrane is going to be very, very, very busy. If you have small cells, proportionally less busy, right? Now, what happens as a cell goes from smaller size to big size is, as the volume of the cell increases, the physiologic processes increase also. There's more activity going on, so there's going to be more traffic from inside and out of the cell. So as the volume increases, however, the surface area that increases proportionally is not sufficient for the degree of the activity that's going on. So there will be traffic jams. Okay? So for the bigger cells, there's increased metabolic activity, so there's a busier membrane. So there's membrane traffic jam if the volume of the cell increases, is bigger compared to the surface area of the membrane. So there'll be a lot of traffic jams on the membrane. For example, consider this. Now, both of these cubic structures here, this is one big cell, okay? And this is the tiny cells occupying the same volume. Each cell here is 10 nanometer, whatever, or 10 nanometers, and this is over 30 nanometers. But the volume of this cell and the volume of these combined cells is the same. But look at the surface area of this one cell. Surface area is 5,400, whereas the combined surface area, look at this cell, it has all its size, and this cell with all its size, and this cell with all its size, the combined surface area, all this tiny small cells, is 16,200. In other words, if you were a small carbon dioxide molecule, and if you wanted to get out of the cell, okay, there's a lot more opportunity to get out of from this small cell than if you're stuck in over here. You'd have to go all the way over here to find a membrane. And then you're going to have a traffic jam like this because you can't get out of the cell, right? Because the surface area is much smaller. But the surface area is multiplied by manyfold if the cells are smaller. Okay, so one thing that limits the size of the cell is diffusion. The second thing is this ratio between the surface area to the volume of the cell. Okay, the third thing that limits the size of the cell is the amount of DNA. Okay, the amount of DNA a cell contains limits the size. Now, the reason for this is this. Okay, DNA is like that's brain of the cell, right? For any activity to occur, let's say you want to make some proteins, right? The code for those proteins is stored in the DNA here. the DNA has to be copied for this process to occur, right? For any processes to occur, the DNA has to be active for that part, right? So if the cell is gigantic, right? So DNA is being copied for all these processes. It's like having one photocopying machine for a 60-story building, right? So how fast are you make copies of the DNA to supply for all the processes that are going to occur, right? For any processes to occur, the DNA needs to tell what's going to happen. It needs to produce the RNA and produce the proteins, etc., as a result of proteins from that process to run the cell. But if you have only one copy of DNA, as I say, it's like we're having one copy of machine for the whole building. It's like 60-story building or something like that. So it's going to slow down the process, so this can't happen. So the amount of DNA that's necessary to sustain a big cell, right, restricts the growth of the cell. So RNA can only be produced so fast. RNA is a replicated copy of DNA. So cell cannot exceed the size more than its ability to produce the RNA. Okay. Over its lifetime of the cell, the nucleus does not grow very much. Okay. The only way to escape this phenomenon, the only way to get around this is to just make more nuclei. How come you still can't just make more nuclei over here, right? How come you cannot just have more photocopying machines, right? That's exactly what happens in bigger cells. This is like one muscle cell fiber. Let's call it a muscle cell fiber. Is a muscle cell. So this is one muscle cell. And in muscle cells, they have a whole bunch of nuclei. They're multinucleated. They have lots and lots of nuclei. Because why? They need them. Because it's a very, very big, gigantic cell, right? So, but this is one possibility. This is one way to work this. So cells that do grow very big, they have to have more nuclei. Your muscle cells are very big. Yeah? How do they get around it? They get around it by making more nuclei. So those are the three limitations to the cell size that we have explored. One, the ability of diffusion to carry critical molecules into the cells like oxygen and remove waste of the cell like carbon dioxide. The second being the ratio of the volume of the cell, and therefore which reflects the cellular processes, to the surface area of the cell membrane. And third being the size of the nucleus in proportion to the size of the cell. So hopefully those were satisfactory answers for you of why you always wondered how come cells are so small. Inshallah, next time we shall talk about cell division or mitosis. Until then, as-salatu was-salamu ala rasulillah walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.